everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film. And this whole Wes Anderson series is going by way too fast. We're already through his early years and some great films there, and now we're really getting into this is where Wes Anderson started really doing that Wes Anderson thing. And we're going to be talking about Moonrise Kingdom, but I have a whole slate of guests here who are very excited to talk about this film. First off, we have my friend Haley. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. When I heard Wes Anderson, I said, Moonrise Kingdom. When are we talking about Moonrise Kingdom?
And
So
yeah, I
thank you for
immediately put
allowing me.
immediately put Haley down for Moonrise Kingdom. Um, my buddy Rod, thank you so much for coming on.
Always a pleasure, Shane. Thank you for having me on once again.
Of course, and where can they find you, Rod?
Oh, well, Filmstagram, my personal Filmstagram page at the Cinema Gallery, but I also have a podcast with my buddy Ben. We've been doing that for almost 5 years now. The Infinity Film Podcast, so you can find us there, wherever you listen to your podcast.
There you go. And Matt, one of the members of the movie club. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Shane. It's always fun.
We just got done talking about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest for our monthly episode of the movie club. So it's a very different kind of vibe. Nobody got strangled to death in this one. But a
Yeah.
dog did get shot by an arrow and died because Wes Anderson apparently loves killing animals in his movies. Strange side note. But for those who haven't tuned into the show before, we have three segments. We always have coming attractions, and this is February's almost gone already, and it's going to be Friday, February 28th, the last weekend of February, that we're going to be doing some coming attractions. And then we'll do Moonrise Kingdom, our feature film, and then we have some recommendations for you. So, just reading off our slate, we have Last Breath and a new Mobile Suit Gundam film, and a Sloth Story, a new fun animated film. These are all of our wide releases, and then a few other coming out in limited release. But Haley, let's start with you. Which one are you most excited about?
Well, Shane always gives me a rundown of what things are about before we have this conversation because he's more in tune with what's going on. But I actually would be interested in watching a sloth story. It sounds like it's about sort of like taking a cute take on the idea of the family-owned business as opposed to the fast food or, franchise type situation. And if it's a sloth, then, there's going to be puns probably. And I love puns. So, um, I like what they're doing. I feel like that's a cute little concept and it has a lot of potential.
And what I left out that would have got Haley even more excited about this, they are Spanish sloths, and they have Mexican food truck, which is what
Oh,
their food truck is, competing against a cheetah voiced by Leslie Jones, who has a fast food burger restaurant. I actually watched this movie this morning because
oh,
of
really?
recording this. It's a fun little movie. It goes to some crazy places because there's kind of like pseudo zombies and stuff like this. This is kind of wild. It goes to some
Now I really want to see it.
so. But Rod, which one are you most excited about?
Yeah, my dear friend Zoe sounded pretty interesting. Funny story, Shane. I actually had a screener for this last week, so I could have watched it early. And of course, I missed the time, the cutoff time because I fell asleep. Um, so didn't get a
You
chance
can
to
always
watch it.
just email them and ask them to refresh it.
Yeah, that's just you never know how those are gonna go. So I was curious about it though, Shane, because like this director, Kyle Hausman Stokes, it's his directorial debut. Um, so it helps that you have someone like Ed Harris and Morgan Freeman to
Mm-hmm.
kind of help you with your directorial debut. I mean, then you kind of told me the plot synopsis of what it's about. About her. I guess what you said, the war veteran who's seeing her dead friend, all that stuff, and her dad's having Alzheimer's. So, I mean, it all sounds very interesting. I love a good war movie. Hopefully that sounds right. I don't want to be, yeah, hopefully that sounds right. I love a good war movie. Um, and then Sonequa Martin Green also, Shane. I feel like she doesn't get enough credit. I like her as an actress. First saw her in Walking Dead fame. Yeah, that's kind of how I got introduced to her. I haven't watched any of Star Trek Discovery because I'm not big into Star Trek, but and Natalie Morales too, Shane. She always pops up in these in
I
like a couple
love
of
her so
indies
much.
every year.
Like she's like I will. She never comes up if somebody asks me who my favorite actress is, but like I love seeing her pop up in literally anything. Even like she had a small role as Tom's girlfriend in Parks and Rec
I was going to mention Parks and
for
Rec.
a
Yep.
little while. But no, this I got to watch this, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, and I was really moved by this. The acting in this is incredible. And there's some like big like emotional moments in this. And Ed Harris playing aging veteran himself who has Alzheimer's is really good in it. And Morgan Freeman just popping in there every so often being Morgan Freeman, who can argue with that? But Matt, what are you most excited for?
Yeah, I'm excited to see what's it called? Last Breath, right?
Last Breath. Yep.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes I'll watch a movie trailer and it'll either on like YouTube, like a YouTube ad, or when I'm actually like in the theater, and it kind of gets like old after a while because I keep seeing it over and over again, and it's like, oh my God, like I can't escape this thing. But actually, every single time that I've seen this trailer, it actually looks interesting.
Mhm.
So, I mean, also I like Simu Liu, I like Woody Harrelson. Like, there's no reason why I wouldn't watch this movie, especially because like I like watching people who are just like these experts like trying to figure out like something, and then also there's like the claustrophobic aspect because they're all in like some kind of I don't know underwater.
Underwater drill piping and stuff like that.
Yeah, and they're like losing like air. It seems like really interesting. So yeah, why not?
And this is based off a true story, and it's like a pretty harrowing story. So, and it's a nice lean 90 minutes too, which sometimes it's nice to get like a nice tight thriller. A lot of Ed Harris for this weekend because I also have Riff Raff was the one that stood out to me. Like this, I think that really sold me is like the cast in this with Ed Harris and Jennifer Coolidge and Bill Murray and Pete Davidson. I think even specifically the idea of having Bill Murray and Pete Davidson playing an odd couple of assassins on the job really like sold me on this. And like Jennifer Coolidge just being Jennifer Coolidge and stuff like that. I also watched this morning. I think it was a pretty interesting film. So this is an interesting weekend of films because like nothing is going to be like that kind of like big kind of movie as we're moving into March where we're going to get some heavy hitters like Snow White, which Disney I'm sure is really hoping will be a big heavy hitter with them coming out. I think a lot of people have a lot of feelings about that film, but as February wraps up and we start getting into like bigger movie season, there's a lot for everybody coming out this weekend. Even the anime nerds out there want some more Mobile Suit Gundam, which was really weird when I found out that that was literally just 3 episodes of a TV show. It felt it. I did earlier. But anyway, those are our coming attractions, but we're here to talk about Moonrise Kingdom. And here's some background for you. So this film was released in 2012. This is written by Wes Anderson and now a pretty frequent collaborator, Roman Coppola, of the Coppola dynasty of film. And starring Bruce Willis, Edward Norton, Bill Murray, Frances McDormand, Tilda Swinton, Jason Schwartzman, and Bob Balaban. This film had a budget of $16 million, but made $68.8 million. So this is a nice windfall box office wise for Wes Anderson, especially after Fantastic Mr. Fox lost money. Because the world is cruel, because that movie is perfection. Um, this is introducing Jared Gilman and Kara Hayward, who are our two young leads. Takes place on the fictional island of New Penzance, inspired by childhood experiences from both Wes Anderson and Roman Coppola. Has influence in French films like Melody and The 400 Blows. Auditions for the child actors took 8 months of them searching for these kids, and it almost got to the point where they couldn't make the film because like if they couldn't find the right kids this movie wasn't going to work. This did premiere at the Cannes Film Festival. It was nominated for Best Original Screenplay at the Oscars, and it got Golden Globe nomination for Best Musical or Comedy because of course the catch-all Oscar category where apparently just because horror is not drama, quote unquote, you could throw horror in there too. Just ask Heretic this year, oddly enough. Anderson was briefly a scout and starred in a Noah's Ark play as a kid. So, like, those elements of the story came from him. Anderson also found a book on troubled kids. So, like, his parents were having trouble with him and had that moment where they found a book that he found a book that his parents were reading about dealing with troubled children. Apparently, it took Wes Anderson a year to write the first 15 pages of the screenplay before he realized he needed help and brought Roman Coppola in to help flesh out the story. They were going for a Norman Rockwell type of Americana vibe for this film, which I think they hit pretty nicely. Anderson needed to go lower with the budget, so he actually proposed a film that had a $16 million budget after Fantastic Mr. Fox cost $40 million and didn't make its money back. Hayward specifically interpreted Susie as a Margot Tenenbaum type and drew a lot of influence from Gwyneth Paltrow from the Royal Tenenbaums. Lucas Hedges was one of the standouts for the role of Sam, but Wes Anderson didn't think he really fit the role of Sam, so he made a separate character for Lucas Hedges in the film. And he was the antagonistic little kid. Um, Anderson envisioned Sharp, Bruce Willis's character, as a Jimmy Stewart type. So like he kind of had like Jimmy Stewart in mind when he was writing that role, which is very interesting, casting Bruce Willis in that. Anderson said Norton looked like a character from a Rockwell painting and was one of the reasons why he wanted to cast him in this film. They actually created these 6 fictitious books that Susie owned. Like they came up with the cover art, they came up with passages and everything to really make that feel authentic. Anderson animated all 6 books for promotional purposes that Bob Balaban narrated over, which was very interesting. Hayward got to keep her cat from the film, which was very sweet little detail. And also, the first kiss that they shared was actually their first kiss. They did not rehearse it, and neither kid had their first kiss yet. So they wanted to make it feel very authentic in terms of how that played out when they filmed it. But that's all the background I had. So let's dive in. So let's give each of you a chance to kind of give your general thoughts on the film first. But Haley, would you like to go first?
I would love to. Yeah, so one of the things that I love about Moonrise Kingdom that makes it the type of movie I like to talk to people about is like the context I provide is first of all, I mean, I love Wes Anderson. I generally like his movies, but this movie was in my experience a bit more polarizing. Like it was one that not everyone I saw it with liked right away. Um, but like I'm not the sort of person who enjoys romance movies. I don't like love stories usually. And this to me was like if movies were more like this when they approached love, I would like them more because this is real love. It's not pretty. It's weird, it's awkward, but it's endearing and it's like special and beautiful. Like it's beautiful because it's weird. People are weird, especially kids. And like there's something, I mean, when you said that it took 8 months to find those kids, like but they had to find the right kids. They had to find the right kids and they did. Like these are 2 gawky children who are like on, no one really likes them, but they love each other, gosh darn it. And that is just so beautiful. And there's, most romances, they have me rolling my eyes. I know exactly what's going to happen in the movie. You can't say that about this movie. You have no idea what's going to happen. Which is like typical Wes Anderson when he's at his peak. But yeah, I think some of the things that I love the most about this movie are just the authenticity of the love that, these 2 characters share, and also just the authenticity of the relationships of a lot of the people in this whole movie. They're all a little weird, a little off, in that like very lovable Wes Anderson way. But yeah, I just think like Also, just the dialogue is amazing. Every single line of this movie is perfect. Like I was thinking about like, oh, let me think of some quotes. I can't. They're all perfect. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in this movie, but I'm sure we'll talk about it. But that was my big thing is I think this is like what I point to as my favorite romance movie.
My favorite quote is why can't you control your beige lunatics?
Okay, that's got to be
Yeah.
top five.
Oh man.
It's a
Okay,
good one.
real quick, I think the thing that makes me laugh the most, which I don't know why it does, is that Tilda Swinton's character doesn't have a name.
Mm.
Mhm.
It's just child services. It's just like child services? Yes. Just like the way that they interact the whole entire time that way. It's so random and weird. But yeah, that's this movie. But Rod, what are your general thoughts?
So I have a bit of background here because I am not the biggest Wes Anderson fan. I think his style just doesn't click with me. Uh, so Haley, when when Shane was asking me if you were excited, I was like, oh, hopefully she doesn't hate me after I say this. But um,
All opinions welcome.
Shane, this was actually a COVID movie for me.
Okay.
This was a COVID lockdown film for me. So I watched it for the first time 5 years ago, and Haley took the words right out of my mouth. This is one of the most authentic love romance films I've ever seen. And Cheng, you know this kind of because you've been on my pod before. I'm a sucker for a good love story, Haley, and romance and all that. So you and I are kind of opposite on that end, but I agree with you 1000% on the authenticity of all the relationships here, even with the parents. Like I love the dynamic between Bill Murray and Frances McDormand. I just love their back and forth together. But it's the kids. The kids here sell this. If the kids don't work, this movie does not work at all. And the relationship between our two leads,
Mhm.
there's something so sweet and endearing between those two that I just latched onto immediately, even with how they met, right? That awkward meeting when at her show. It's like, yes, I believe it's weird, but I'm falling in love with these kids immediately. Um, and so with that, you still have that Wes Anderson, kooky flair with how he shoots his film, Shane. I
Mhm.
didn't think it was going to work for me, but it worked. And then Haley said something else too, which I totally agree with. There's not a single line here I didn't love. Every line here is perfect. And my favorite line in this entire movie is, I love you, but you don't know what you're talking about. I love
That's
that
a good
line
one.
so much.
Especially the
So,
delivery. I love
yes,
you, but you don't know what you're talking
yes, it's
about.
and if it's said by like an adult or something, it just feel weird, just feel off. But because by that point we have latched onto these kids in this relationship, it works. And so yeah, I love this movie. And Shane, you know me, I'm not a big collector of physical media. I actually did go out to Barnes and Noble this weekend. I got the Criterion for Moonrise Kingdom because
Nice.
yeah, it's probably my favorite. This and Grand Budapest are my two favorite Wes Anderson films, and I don't know if it's because those two films are kind of meant for more than just film fans, but I for some reason like his because I guess these were his back to back, right? This and Grand Budapest.
Yes.
Okay,
So these
so
were his back-to-back feature films, which is interesting because I'm gonna have a couple of short film episodes in between these two.
gotcha.
But this was my favorite of his until Grand Budapest came out, and that movie absolutely blew me away. But like, this is such a sweet film. It has so much going for it. But how about you, Matt? What are your general thoughts?
Yeah, I think humor fantastic in this movie, like from start to finish. I think the cast, like it's so interesting. All these famous people. It's like Pulp Fiction or actually like a lot of other Wes Anderson movies, actually. Just so many famous like A-listing people. I don't know. That's like really interesting to see people an ensemble like that. And also a little bit odd, but I really like the music. And the music is really it's like, huh? Like what am I
Yeah.
listening to? But in like a really cool way. Like I was in the car with a friend of mine and I on a playlist I had the ending song in this movie, the Cuckoo song, and it popped up. My friend was like, "What is this?" And I was like, nothing." And I hit the next button. But like, it's a good song, and I definitely listened to it after he left the car. But like,
Matt, who was it?
yeah, it
Was it?
was
Was it?
Ramsey.
It was Ramsey.
It was like a while back. But yeah, what do I think? I think one other really funny line, just because I really like this movie in terms of like the quotables. Another really funny line is when Frances McDormand says to Bill Murray, she says, "Would you like to know that your daughter is missing?" And then he says something like, "I think that's a loaded question." What?
Yeah.
It's a great movie. It's a great movie.
This so much fun. I think Alexandra Desplat was put on this earth to make scores for Wes Anderson movies. Because he just really understands the strange, quirky, idiosyncratic nature of his films, and that you have to match that, I think, musically. And this film definitely has a very specific feel to the music and the atmosphere. And this feels like I didn't think about like Norman Rockwell before I read like the notes on this when I was researching, but like this really does feel like that old Americana kind of painting.
There's
And it's really,
nostalgia for sure,
yeah.
like
And it's
seeped
supposed
into it.
and it's supposed to be capturing that kind of feel, especially. And the two of them, like, I've been so excited to try to see the two of them popping up in other things since then, which I've seen Kara Hayward pop up in a few things, which she was in Manchester by the Sea, I think, briefly with Lucas Hedges. And she's popped up in a few things, and I've seen Jarrett Gilman pop up in a few things, but like they're so perfect together in this. And just their relationship. And I I appreciate that this film's willing to go there. Like kids are gonna experiment and do some stuff. And like that whole entire sequence when they're in their little Moonrise Kingdom, that little crescent beach was so authentic, which also, my God, that was the most hilarious thing when they woke up the next morning and unzip, and it's just all of that. And Bill Murray comes like
Picks
trudging
up the
up,
tent.
which I don't think there's anything a better vibe than Bill Murray shirtless carrying an axe
Yes.
going out. He's like, I'm gonna go chop some wood. Like, I love that these kids are so nuanced and smart and just capture this feeling of they understand the world so much better than the adults. And that's one of the best things in like that's a very Tim Burton thing. And it's
Mhm.
also Wes Anderson kind of thing. And like the policeman, he's sad. And Bruce Willis, this is like the fact that this came out the same year as Looper, which are both incredible films, and he gives two very different kinds of performances. But like this is such a beautiful performance from him because it lacks ego. Like I don't think a whole lot of A-list stars would want to play somebody who's, he's not the smartest person. And he's also very sad. And he just embodies that so perfectly. Edward Norton's a little out of his element. And it's so fun seeing him in this because like Edward Norton can play a dick like really, really well in a lot of things. And here he's just like this kind of unassuming kid because like and Jiminy Cricket, he flew the coop. And just like stuff like that. And just Francis McDormand and Bill Murray has such a weird, interesting relationship. And just this whole entire thing aesthetically, this is where he started really doing like little models for certain things. The whole running uh motif of like Bob Balaban being there to like narrate things along, and it's like, then we're this many hours away from that hurricane. coming and making landfall and just being like, this is imminent, this is gonna go crazy. And like the third act of this movie goes some places. Like the lightning, the hurricane, the flooding, all of this stuff on top of the church. Wild. And also a little side note for Jason Schwartzman, who like rolls up in this movie for like a couple of scenes and just
Epic.
steals it because he's just he gets he completely understands the expectation of being in a Wes Anderson movie so well. Since he'd been doing it since he was like 18 with Rushmore. And he's just such a fun character to throw in there. But I guess what are some of the things that really stood out to all of you about the film?
I just want to say, because you kind of said it already, Shane, that the whole thing with the parents, they're all kind of idiots. Even, or not just, Edward Norton as well, not a parent, but like they're all just not really understanding what's really going on here. And I think if I remember correctly, Tilda Swinton kind of calls them out on on it near the end of the film. And like she's just saying what we're all thinking the entire time. And I kind of like this running joke they have going on with Edward Norton's character of, do you not have a hold of your troops? Like he's just so incapable of keeping
Oh,
track.
and when he
But
gets emasculated by Harvey Keitel's
yes,
character later in the film, it's just like, oh no. It's just like you feel bad for him because like he really doesn't he's completely out of his element. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing.
absolutely.
But like he's earnestly so. Like there's something like Francis McDormand and Bill Murray feel so world weary
Yep.
and like beat down. And like what I love most about Bruce Willis's character is like, yeah, he might not be the smartest, but like he's really trying to understand and he really does care what's best for these kids. And like I love that interaction that he has with Sam about love. And he's just like, where was it? I found it here. What's your rush? You've got your whole life in front of you and ahead of you, I mean. And she's like, maybe so. Anyway, you're a bachelor. He's like, so are you. It's like, that's true. Did you love someone ever? He's like, yes, I did. It's like, what happened? She didn't love me back. Ah, I'm sorry for your loss anyway. That's what you're supposed to say. And like pours the kid some beer. Which like just adds to that scene. But like it's interesting because like he's having like a mature conversation with this kid. And he's like treating him with respect and like speaking to him on the same level. Because to be honest, I'm pretty sure Sam's kind of on his level a little bit in terms of like intelligence and stuff like that. Because like Sam and Susie are bright kids. Like
And
they're
that's
just
their problem.
that is their problem because nobody gets them except each other. She's a raven.
Hmm.
She's a raven.
That's what I was gonna say too, Shane. Like that conversation with Bruce Willis, that's probably his first time really having a sincere conversation with an adult because his
Yeah,
foster parents, as we learned pretty early on, are not the best of people. So
it's just like I'm just gonna have to say, we can't have him back. What do you mean you can't have him back? Like, we're gonna have him soon. It's like, and like Bruce Willis just does not understand.
right.
Like he's so sincere that he's like, how can you possibly not want to take this child back? And like I think that's such a beautiful thing that he winds up taking in Sam. And he has his little patrolman outfit on at the end of the movie. They're matching. It's adorable.
On that note, I think there's also I had made a note when I was thinking about this in anticipation of this conversation, and it's not just the intelligence. I also think it's like this sense of like poise and respect that these two children bring to the situation, and like they are clearly at odds with their superiors, but also their peers. Like their peers do not like them. They don't fit in, but they both are just like be like older beyond their years, and their interactions with one another are, yes, they're awkward, but they're also really touching, and they have so much respect for one another. Like again, this is like a model of what love should be. Like it's actually not super physical. It's so much more of just like a shared soul situation of these two people immediately finding each other and seeing in each other like what they've been missing, and then these like really tender moments of like, I might wet the bed later. Oh, it's totally fine, and then like him piercing her ears, just like all this
Oh my
stuff that
God.
like
That
but
got me so bad because I am not okay with sharp objects puncturing flesh. And I'm just like, this is a bad idea.
it's beautiful. Do the other one.
Yes. That's
But
so
like it's so like, yes, the adults are like a little misguided, but like their fellow kids are all kind of just like out of it too. I mean, I love the like a Boy Scout troop who gets deputized and is like because that's a whole vibe in and of itself, but they're also like not. They have to kind of gain a respect for Sam because of his wiles and his like being like a kind of just like proving himself to be rough and tumble enough, but
yeah.
yeah, so I think that there's something there. Like clearly these two are just beacons of like enlightenment, and then really everyone else is there's nothing wrong with it. They're more normal. They do things you would expect.
I think the two things that really stick out is when they're like the rest of the troop are on the hunt and they have like clubs and like all of these things. I'm like, oh my God, they're like out to murder somebody. What is this, like Frankenstein? It's like the mob or like Beauty and the Beast. And then the dock scene where all the adults come to like these blows and how childish they're acting and immature about it. Like that scene is so encompassing of the whole entire opposite dynamics of the children versus the adults in this film. And like Bob Balaban has to like actually like that's the first time like he actually interacts with anybody in the film besides just being like there to narrate. And he just like, I think I know where they're going. Um, and then we find them. They found them, and ruined their little party. But like, there's just so many like the immaturity of like Bill Murray in particular. I feel like he wakes up that next morning when they're searching. He has like a black eye. It's like, did you hit him? Like it's like he fell down in the dark. And just like all of that kind of awkwardness, and like there's so much awkwardness in this movie, but it just works so perfectly for sure.
I'll say that me thinking back to when I was like a teenager or maybe I guess like a tween or something like that and having crushes on people. Like I felt like I wanted to kind of like walk into the movie. It's towards the beginning when he I guess when he meets up with like the when Sam meets up with like the little girl and they're like walking around the forest together and he just keeps this barrage of facts. He just keeps talking like at her. And I wanted to like reach into the screen and say, stop doing that. Like just be chill, be normal, stop talking like that. Stop being an encyclopedia. I don't know if any of you guys ever felt like watching the movie, like you saw kind of like shades of either people that you met when you were younger or like things that you either did or said when you were younger. And it's like, oh my God, stop. Please stop.
Actually, Matt, I was getting tons of PTSD flashbacks during a lot of like awkward scenes. I was like, oh, it reminds me of the time I did that wrong. I was awkward. Yeah. So, Matt, I
Yeah.
got you.
It's
Yep.
like, oh man, like, why are you talking? Like, I was thinking to myself, I was like, oh man, this reminds me when I was talking like a Wikipedia article. Like, I could just been talking like a normal person. Just talk to her like a normal person, Matt. Like, I don't know. But yeah, no, great movie.
Well, and that's the thing too, because like we don't really come into our own until what like into like our 20s and stuff like
Late
that. Like
30s. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
I'm still not there.
it's just like love is tough. And like the 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 adults in the room in the story are so beaten down by life that like they can't comprehend that these two kids honestly just sincerely love each other and want to make it work. And I think this film is so important for like adults, the adults in the room, to sit back and think about like, you know, there was a time where like I felt this like sincerest feelings towards somebody and didn't have to think about that timing and, you know, employment, financial security, and all of these things go into relationships working and stuff like that. And even just like it's like, well, I need a fee. And they give him like the jars, like, we're really concerned about their future. We really would like to give them the changes, like my fee. He just slowly pushes the coins over to them. It's just that's so encompassing because like like these kids are ready to just run off together. What the hell are they gonna do? But the thing is, they care about each other that much. And there's times where I think that these adults really needed to take a step back and really think about when was the last time they cared that much about somebody. And, you know, like Bruce Willis having this affair with Frances McDormand's character. And like, I think she's just doing it for like the fling of it, for something like outside of her normal, because obviously her relationship with Bill Murray is strained and in a rut and just at this place, and you just feel bad for Sharp because like the dude's just sad and he's a well-meaning genuine person, and you know Bruce Willis just plays that so well. This whole entire cast is fantastic. Like Wes Anderson really knows how to like put some actors in a place, and they really know how to like cue into that frequency and everything. But like this film has some thrilling moments, like the whole entire flood towards the end. Like that's really intense when they're on
Mm-hmm.
top of that church and all the water and the lightning and stuff like that, and they're all like hanging out, like hanging from the church at the very end. It just Wes Anderson really knows how to like inject some unexpected kinds of thrills and stuff into his films. Like I think Grand Budapest is like peak. Like this is such an interesting like alchemy of different kinds of things thrown together. But like this film has a lot going for it, and it's so charming and sweet. But I guess, do any of you have anything else that stands out that you wanted to bring up about the film?
Lefty scissors getting stabbed in the back. Lefty scissors, unexpected. Also, that Sam getting hit by lightning and his
Yes.
body getting thrown, like also unexpected. And him just popping up and saying, "Okay, well, let's just keep going." Okay. Or even like a couple minutes before that, like the aerial shot of Sam getting chased by all those boys, and
Yes.
he's like running, and then it was almost my brain. I was watching this earlier. I immediately thought of like Scooby Doo or something. It's
Yeah.
like, like what's
And
happening?
straight up Benny Hill here.
Yeah.
Watch them chasing after each other.
My question is, Shane and everyone, like, how do they get that? How do they build their tree house up that high? That's my question.
How would you build it
Dangerous.
lower?
Low, yeah, lower.
Actually, Matt, I'm glad you brought up the lightning strike because, like, there's a lot of kind of like silliness in this movie. That's probably the only thing that I think was like a little superfluous. I love it and I don't mind that it's in there, but like, whereas the lightning strike is very like over the top, and you could say, like, well, now they're just being silly with it. I think that storm scene, like, in thinking about it, you ask yourself like, well, why go that intense with it? Like, why did it have to be such a dramatic whatever when up until that point it had been pretty cutesy? Um, but I think it's because there had to be real stakes involved at the end for like everyone to kind of have a hard reset because up until that point everyone was like, these little kids are not allowed to be together. Like, come on. Um, and like yes, they did run away and they were doing something that like society would consider to be like wrong. You're not allowed to be by yourselves, but it's because society failed them first, and they weren't getting like what they needed from the places they were. And literally, it took them being in a life or death situation and Tilda Swinton kind of slapping everyone in the face to be like, no, like these kids are serious about this. And like, okay, any little kid could run to the beach and like dance around in their underwear, but not every kid would, like try to flee up to the top of the tower and then like hang off there. And actually, I think that might be my favorite quote of the movie is when they think they're gonna die and Sam says to Susie, "Thank you for marrying me." It's just so sincere and
Hmm.
cute. I just want to say thank you for marrying me. Um, but yeah, so I think that like the the whole like trajectory of the movie feels a little absurd, but looking back on it, I was like, I think that that really did need to happen. Because then from that point onward, everyone else kind of realizes like this is the legitimacy that these kids have like we've seen it the whole time, but no one else was seeing it. Um, and I think that is why they were able to create this sort of tenuous but like legitimate relationship um, that then we're left with the cute cuckoo song and everything at the end that Matt mentioned.
Well, I think it's very interesting too with like the Noah
Mm,
motifs in the film because like it's very specific that like one, it was a Noah's Ark performance, and then there's a flood at the end, and then they're paired off together
mhm.
during this whole entire thing. And like, was that necessary? No, but it adds some interesting layers and context to it. And that flood, I appreciate you bring that up, Haley. Like they needed some kind of shock to this system. Because
Mm,
like it isn't like the fact that they can't be together isn't on them.
right.
It's this whole entire society, this community that's been created. And like that flood came in to just wash all the cynicism, the the bad perspectives, and just all of that away. And both water and fire can be things that are cleansing.
Mm,
And I feel like this flood coming in and kind of like cleansing this island and really reshaping things. And you know even like little details like Edward Norton has himself a lady, the operator, who only pops up like a couple times, and you can see like how she interacts with him a little bit, and you have all those like little moments, and how everybody kind of like refocuses and find things again in this is really nice. um Even the bishops, who certainly need to take a step back and really think about their marriage. I love this back and forth, like, I'm sorry, Walt, it's not your fault. What injuries are you apologizing for specifically? Specifically, which everyone still heard, like half of those were self-inflicted. I hope the roof flies off and I get sucked up into space. You'll be better off without me. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Why? We're all they've got, Walt, and that's not enough. And it's just like when they really have like these moments in this film, these are some profound things that are being said in this. This isn't some like fun, goofy little film. Like there's some really meaningful themes and ideas that are being processed here. And I think that's what makes us stand out so well. But this is a charming little film. And it's certainly like I don't feel like a lot of Wes Anderson films are very like super romantic in this kind of way. And I feel like this is like a really nice change of pace that I appreciated. And young love is so sincere and sweet, and Wes Anderson like really captures that in this film. But those were our thoughts on Moonrise Kingdom, but we always like to leave this show with some recommendations for everybody. So let's go around the horn. Haley, what would you like to recommend to everybody?
so I would love to recommend for anyone who is a Wallace and Gromit fan, and even if you are not, A Vengeance Most Foul. You should check that movie
There's
out.
McGraw.
It's I mean, so I was raised as a good half Canadian child on Wallace and Gromit, and it is very dear to me, like extremely dear to me. And I was not sure, like it's been a little while since they've released a movie, and this felt like they were really trying to kind of like get back to what their like roots were. Obviously with the repetitive character and even just like the style and everything. And so I was really kind of like interested to see how well it held up. And I think it was a good merge of like, hey, listen, it's 2025 now, so we've got some like slightly better effects, but we're not like it's the visual is still right.
Mm.
There's a couple little bells and whistles that they added, I think, to kind of smooth it out, but really like it still feels about the same. Um, and it's silly and sweet and I don't know. I think it fits and I was really happy that it kind of like worked well with the other one like the other movies that I love so much. Um and yes, Feathers McGraw is one of the greatest villains of all time and he does not disappoint in this movie. So,
He doesn't whip out a gun this time, but he is still a very dangerous. He is the most devious penguin in
have you
all of
seen
stop
this
motion
chicken?
animation. It's just a sweet nun driving that boat.
He
I
spins
just
around in the chair.
I just love Wallace and Gromit so much, and this 100% felt like all the atmosphere, feeling, and charm of those original short films. And this felt like such the perfect continuation of Feathers McGraw coming back for this. The gnomes, those gnomes are terrifying.
Yeah, they were kind of scary actually.
Terrifying gnomes. This is still one of my two 5-star movies of 2025 so far. Because this was absolute perfection, and I love Wallace and Gromit. But Rod, what would you like to recommend to everybody?
Yeah. So for any watchers fans of the show or Marvel fans, I highly recommend your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Shane, I was a bit nervous going into this. Being as Spider-Man is my favorite Marvel character. I still had high hopes, but I was a little nervous just because it didn't look like something in my particular age group. Like maybe it was meant a little bit more for the younger crowd, and I have
But then
seen a
it
lot of.
wasn't.
Yep, Shane, this is because this show gets violent and dark, especially towards the back half of the season. But this is a great Spider-Man show. And one Shane, I haven't talked to you about it, but for me, I put it on par, maybe not as good as, but on par with some of those earlier Spider-Man shows. I'm not saying it's as great as that 90s animated Spider-Man show that we have. I don't think anything will ever touch that, but it's on that same wavelength of like Spectacular Spider-Man, which came out, I want to say mid 2010, Shane, I think. Yeah, the voice work is all fantastic. This show has an immense amount of heart. It gets violent when it needs to, and it takes these second and third level Marvel characters and makes them very prominent, like Nico, even Tombstone, who's not like a prominent at Marvel
Yeah.
character, and they give them emotional depth that I did not expect and I didn't think I needed. And while they still tie in, because this is I guess this is all well I guess this is all still tied into the MCU, so they add in a lot of MCU lore into this, and it's just great. There's nice little Easter eggs and surprises for Marvel fans, and yeah, if you're a Spider-Man fan, definitely check it out. If you're a Marvel fan, I would say give it a watch. It's 10 episodes. Each
Yep.
episode runs about 35-ish, 30 to 35 minutes long, but they fly by. It's great. It's quick, and Shane, it's probably my favorite show of the year so far. I've been watching a lot of stuff. It won't be like that forever, but this was
Mhm.
a nice surprise to kick off the year.
This was like Pullman Domingo
So good.
as Norman Osborn is so damn good in this show.
Yeah.
And just the evolution of Spider-Man, the interesting dynamic of him teaming up with Norman Osborn, who's like supplying him with like super suits. It's basically what if it was Norman instead of Tony Stark from the MCU Spider-Man. And then we get Doc Ock, which is great, and Doctor Strange for 2 episodes,
Well, I
which
was telling
was
someone else, Shane, that this is a better season of What If than the last season of What If we got. So
Well, to be fair, they did get like a whole entire season to flesh this out and stuff like that.
They
But no,
did.
this was a great like alternate version of the MCU Spider-Man.
Yep.
And yeah, I really cared about these characters and I'm looking forward to more. Um I don't get why I'm guessing the reason they did 2 episode release was so they could get this out before Daredevil comes out, which I am
Correct.
super excited for
Yep.
for sure. And Matt, what would you like to recommend to everybody?
Yeah, I recommend if you have HBO Max, definitely watch a show called The Pitt. If you're a fan of ER from like decades ago, it's one of the main character, the same actor, one of the main characters is like basically giving him the job of head of the emergency department, and he having just to train like students. Except it's interesting because this show it it has almost no music, right? So when you're watching something and it has like zero music, music is interesting because it kind of has like a comforting vibe and almost kind of like a distracting kind of thing. But there's almost none inside of this thing. So like you'll hear like when someone like flat lines, or you'll hear like someone's kind of like doing chest compressions and like the person is kind of like and the doctor like over the person's like exhaling. Like it's really like an intense on like multiple levels kind of show. Like it's sometimes there's like a couple like funny like one-liners, but there's like very like sparse. In to better effect because then you don't get it kind of like I don't know like distracted by like why are they joking around. I don't know. It's a realistic show. I highly recommend it. It's really good. I hope it gets like a bunch of awards, honestly. And if that doesn't get awards, then I'm hoping White Lotus gets a bunch of awards. I'd also recommend White Lotus too, for a lot of reasons.
I'll be watching episode 2 as I'm editing this stuff and putting this together tonight. So as we're doing this on a Sunday night. Um, I have my quick 3 usual recommendations that I do: a new film, a watch list film, and rewatching one of my films that I own. I got a few Slam Dance screeners over the weekend from Slam Dance Film Festival, and one of them was called In the Mouth, which is a 84-minute long crime thriller dark comedy about a man who's agoraphobic and afraid to leave his house because there's a giant version of himself stalking him in his front yard. And this is shot in like this crisp black and white. And he's about to be thrown out because he can't pay his rent. So he takes in a boarder who happens to be an escaped convict. And this goes to some wild places. I just recommend it for at least watch it once for just the sheer ambition of just this wild premise. And I think it's Colin Burgess is the main character, and he has such a manic, crazy performance in this, and it's so much fun. And it's also so strange seeing like a giant version of himself just like sitting on the front lawn from like here up. It's
Is
just
it like Attack on Titan vibes? Like, what is going on with this gigantic, like,
human being. I even
presence
made a
just looming in the back?
I even made a joke during my review that like this would be terrifying for me. My head's big enough. Like I don't want to see a giant version of me stalking me outside of my home. So it's such a wild film for sure. This was like one of the few narrative films that I got. A bunch of them were documentaries, which I would recommend a bunch of those, but like this one, I think just from the creative standpoint is worth watching. Next up off my watch list is The Freshman from 1925, starring Harold Lloyd, one of the big 3 physical comedians of early cinema. He also did Safety Last, that whole stunt with him like hanging from like a clock tower and everything that's very iconic. This is about a college freshman who is mistaken for being the coolest kid in college and then tries to back it up by joining the football team. And physical comedy shenanigans ensues. And this is the subject of the cinematic wasteland for this coming month as we go through. That's one of my podcasts where each month we do a little bit of film history and discuss one film from that year of cinema. And so you can check out Luke and Adam and I discussing that over on the SPDM Crew Podcasting Network. And lastly, to celebrate my 1 year anniversary of the Wasteland Retrospective podcast, each for that show, my guests and I each pick a film that are related in some shape or form. And this episode's going to be Jess, my wife, and I discussing a couple of old school comedies, and one of them was Frank Capra's Arsenic and Old Lace. This movie is like 2 hours of complete mayhem in this home out in Brooklyn, and Cary Grant plays a theater critic and known writer about how much he's like anti-marriage, who winds up getting married on the down low, and then goes back to his home of his family, and it turns out that his two like old granny great aunts are like serial killers who have like a dozen bodies buried in their basement. His one brother thinks he is President Theodore Roosevelt, and his other brother who comes back is also a serial killer. And all kinds of mayhem ensues. And this is hilarious. This really reinforces to me that George Clooney is basically today's Cary Grant, because they have that same kind of crazy manic energy. Like if you've seen George Clooney in a Coen Brothers movie, it's Cary Grant in Arsenic and Old Lace, like turned up, doing this like crazy over the top performance. It is darkly funny and hilarious, and would definitely recommend. It has a fun, dark sense of humor. But those are plenty of recommendations for all of you. And that's a wrap on this episode of Welcome to the Wasteland. But thank you, Haley. And thank you, Rod. And thank you, Matt, for all coming on and discussing Moonrise Kingdom. And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland review.